Good day and welcome back to the Hipkins Twins YouTube channel. I'm Craig Hipkins, and today's topic, the Bone Wars. And what, you might ask, are the Bone Wars? Well, they have to do with dinosaurs. Up until about the 1820s, uh, dinosaurs weren't known as a thing. Um, uh, there wasn't uh, there wasn't a science called paleontology until later on. So actually, the first fossils that were found related to dinosaurs were found in the late 17th century in England, and the people that found them thought that they had belonged to an ancient race of giants that lived long before human beings populated the planet, and of course they had no basis to believe that they belonged to anything prehistoric because they didn't know anything about dinosaurs in the 17th century. So they automatically assumed that they must have been an ancient race of giants. Um, taking biblical references and stuff like that to account as proof. So those bones were later, they were stored away and they were later taken out and re-examined in the 1820s. But um, paleontology, or the dinosaur uh, fossil hunting, didn't really uh, take a big jump until the late 1700s. It was actually a young girl, a 12-year-old girl, that found a fossil skull. Her and her brother found a fossil skull of an ichthyosaur in England, and it got the attention of some scientists. One of the fellows' name was Gideon Mantell. He was later known for finding the iguanodon and piecing together an iguanodon, and they sort of had their own little bone wars uh, in England there in the middle part of the 19th century between Mantell and Richard Owen. And there was some it was an issue as far as what strata the bones were found, if they were found in the Mesozoic era, or if they were found in a later date, sometime during the Cretaceous. And of course, they did come to the conclusion that the iguanodon bones were found in a early Cretaceous strata. So they put two and two together and said, okay, this must have been a massive creature that existed, and that was the kind of the birth of the dinosaur era. But of course, it spread to North America in the United States, and in the late 1860s, I believe, or 18, right around the time of the U.S. Civil War. Um, there were two paleontologists, O.C. Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope, both Easterners. They were both. I think Marsh was from, I believe he was from Massachusetts, and I believe Cope was from Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken. But both of these guys were fossil hunters, and they kind of, at first they were friends, and then they kind of crossed paths. And sort of became competitive. And it all stemmed from an incident where uh, Cope had found a fossil of an Elasmosaurus, which is a sea creature, is a plesiosaur with the long necks and the fins. He had with the four fins. You've probably seen illustrations of a plesiosaur. Elasmosaurus was a large plesiosaur. And apparently, Cope had, they was putting the fossils together, because most of the time when fossils are found, they're found in a group, but they're all discombobulated, right? So he put the skull of the Elasmosaurus on the tail. Well, Marsh, when he was examining the fossils, told Cope that the head's supposed to go on the other side, the other end. And of course, that irked that irked Cope, and because he had already published a paper on it, so it was kind of like a humiliating experience for him. He would have to change the paper, so they got into a kind of a rift. And after that, it was the competition was on. Cope would, every time a fossil discovery was made somewhere out west, Cope would send his crew out there, and Marsh would send his crew, and they would basically try to sabotage each other's discoveries, or the competitiveness was kind of ridiculous. And it was ridiculous. If they had just worked together, they could have. Inevitably, what happened was they they ended up with a bunch of bones, and it was a competition to see who could collect as many as they could. And they put these fossilized bones together, and some of them were in the wrong spot or whatever. In fact, Cope kind of got his revenge on Marsh. It wasn't really Cope that did it, but Marsh wrote a book called, and I have it right here. He wrote a book called "The Dinosaurs of North America," published in 1896. And this isn't an original, but it's a copy. I've had it for a few years, and it's actually kind of interesting. But he sketched in it. I think he sketched this, or he had somebody sketch it. But it's an illustration of a brontosaurus, which was one of his finds, and he screwed up because that head is not a brontosaurus's head; it is a brachiosaurus's head, and yet the illustration still survives. So he kind of did the same thing that Cope did. But anyway, both of the guys ended up. They both found a lot of great fossils and dinosaurs. Marsh, of course, Marsh is responsible for the Brontosaurus and Stegosaurus, and Cope, of course, found the Plesiosaurs. So they both had a lot of discoveries to their credit, and yeah, so that's kind of the Bone Wars. Here's a picture of Edward Drinker Cope right here, and here's a picture of Marsh. He's up here in the middle with the beard here, and they would send their crews out. That's him with his crew. This book here is an old book. I've had this since I was about 7 years old. It was by the Time Life books, Life Before Man, and it's kind of falling apart, but I still read it. It's a good book. So that's a little bit about the Bone Wars. We'll see you next time.